so much, everybody, for coming back to our biweekly podcast of the Colorado Victim Advocate, sponsored here by Intervention Inc. Intervention is a nonprofit organization based here in Colorado since 1986, providing court services to our various judicial districts. Our podcast, the Colorado Victim Advocate, is highlighting and bringing awareness to the wonderful work that all of our victim service agencies are providing here, both nonprofit and systems-based organizations. We're very, very happy today to have with us Nicole Ferguson, who is the Executive Director of Mariposa Center for Safety in Pueblo, Colorado. Want to welcome you to our program, Nicole. Thanks for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Nicole, I want to talk to you about the services that Mariposa provides there in Pueblo. So just tell us about the agency and the work that it does.
Sure. So Mariposa Center for Safety was once known as the YWCA of Pueblo. So folks are generally familiar with the work that we do with regard to domestic violence. Our primary program is our domestic violence shelter, where we help house those fleeing domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, or family violence. We also operate Teresa's Place, which is our safe visitation and exchange program. We work with the local court district and those in the adjoining counties to make sure that parents have a safe place to visit their children that requires supervised visitation, or also exchange their children, in the instances that someone may have a protective order or something along those lines. We kind of serve as that middle person to help provide a safe place for visitation and exchange, just so kiddos have as much normalcy as possible. They don't have to go exchange in a police station or a DHS building, anything like that. We make sure that our services and our space is very homey. We have games and snacks and couches and all of that, just to kind of reduce the impact that domestic violence has on the children that we serve. In addition to those two programs, we have our Runaway and Homeless Youth program. We work with the local school district D60 to make sure that we can try to prevent homelessness as a result of domestic violence or those kind of fleeing for a safer space. And then lastly, we have our prevention and outreach service. So we do have a couple of folks who, go out and do things like table at events or educate the public, again, working with the local courts and police stations and probation offices. We will go out and do some of those kind of partnerships with the community and just make sure they're as educated on kind of the current trends and things to expect about domestic violence, so that they kind of have as much knowledge as they can when it comes to their decision making and how they serve the population here in Pueblo.
So a lot of the work that you do, so is it fair to say that those clients that you would be working with, those are victims of crime? Is that correct?
Yes, generally speaking, that is true.
Okay. And as far as, the programming that you're talking about, because I know that probably one of the biggest issues that are out there for domestic violence victims, among many of those that are out there, is with regards to, you talked about your Safe Exchange program. And I'd really like to go in a little bit more detail about that, because I think that's something that people really need to know about, because that there's too many of those folks that are out there. Oh, well, we can exchange the kids at a McDonald's or at a relative's house or something like that, and there's all those other issues that may come from that. So can you just talk about how the program began, what were the issues it was trying to resolve, and how do people get involved with it? How do people, come in contact with it?
Yeah, so I think, just realizing that there's a need for a conflict-free space. We do, oddly enough, still experience conflict at our exchange place. We have security. Anytime the Safe
Mhm.
Exchange office is open, we do staff it with security. We make sure to have separate entrances. So if one parent comes in one door on maybe the north side of the building, the other parent will come in on the south side of the building, just to make sure that we kind of minimize those interactions. A lot of the folks that we serve are court ordered. These are court ordered supervised
Oh,
visitations. And so I think, it came from seeing that there was a need for a place for this to occur. We do work closely with law enforcement, and we know that these are calls that they're receiving. So dispatch, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that dispatch has received hundreds of calls of instances of violence that have occurred or threats that have occurred because of these exchanges. So I think that's kind of how the need arose for a place for this to happen, to kind of minimize that interaction between those families.
And so kind of give me, a basic idea. So let's say, for instance, there's somebody out there who is going through some type of civil court process or something like that. And the court says, okay, you're going to have to do a safe exchange with your ex-partner or with the child's parent. What goes on from that point right there? So let's say, for instance, we're talking from the court to when the folks show up at your front door or when they contact you. I mean, how are they met with that?
So they will generally receive a court order. Someone will provide us with a court order. The parent has to reach out to us and make the request. We don't get it directly from the court. Once the parent receives the request, then it's our job to reach out to the non-custodial parent and
Hmm.
ask them, hey, we've been asked to kind of supervise these visits or provide these exchanges. Do you agree to utilizing our services to do that? And then they have to agree yes or no, and then we will conduct the intake process. If for some reason the non-custodial parent doesn't respond or doesn't want services, then we will let the court know, hey, we reached out to
Oh,
them. They
okay.
didn't provide a response, so we're not going to take them on as a client. If they do, then we'll go through the intake process just because we do read the court order, so we know kind of the initiating reason why the visitations are supervised. So we'll know if, it's a domestic violence issue or a substance abuse issue, just so we kind of know what we're looking for when the visitations do occur. And then we'll set that up with the client. If the court says we need them to meet twice a week or once a week, whatever those visits look like. Generally, visits are about an hour and a half long. And then we will just set those up according to everybody's schedule whenever we can make that happen. And then if a parent, say the custodial parent is sick and can't make the visit, they'll contact us, then we'll contact the non-custodial parent. So it really minimizes that need for them to interact with one another at all because we do all of that kind of lift for them.
And what would you say to those folks contacting you that are under court order? What would you say to them if they say something to the effect of, well, what are some of the dangers that might occur, or what type of safety precautions do you have? Because I know you said you have a security officer there, but I mean, we know that with domestic violence cases, obviously it can be amplified immediately. And what are some of those those safety precautions that you do take?
So we do have everyone sign some intake information, just the packet that says, you're permitted to park here and you have to leave. We stagger the drop-offs every 15 minutes. So
Oh,
we make
okay.
sure that, the one parent is dropping off and then they're gone out of the vicinity before the next parent arrives. So we take a lot of precautions just to make sure that there's no need for them to interact. So they
Mhm.
can't say that they violated a restraining order by using our services, right? Then we do have security. They will, monitor the building. They walk around outside. They're inside. They will escort the parents and the children to their visit, because we do have a 3-story building, so it requires some navigation support. And then, of course, we say we are a neutral party. It is not our job to report to the court. We do take documentation and notes just so that we know kind of what happened, if a visit was canceled or why it had to close early, any of that information. But it's not really our job to go to the court and testify. We're a neutral third party. So if, for instance, a client did come in and they felt unsafe, maybe they saw the vehicle of someone else that they weren't supposed to be here or they're not supposed to have contact with, it's really their responsibility to contact law enforcement. We try not to do that, but we will have security have someone moved if they were to be volatile or anything of that nature.
Are folks who are not part of the court system but did have, a custody issue going on, are those folks eligible to be part of your program as well?
They are. We do allow self-referral, so folks can utilize that. Unfortunately, right now we do have a waiting list, so those people would most likely
Really?
get moved to the bottom of the list. But if a space were to come available, we would certainly open up a space for those people. It really just depends on parent schedules. So a lot of times, there's only Saturdays and Sundays and people are off on Saturday and Sunday.
Hmm.
Those slots get filled up pretty quickly, as you can imagine, because we try to work around both parties' work schedules.
And so, and the hours of this program, is it strictly Monday through Friday?
We are open. We're actually closed Sunday and Monday now. We're
Okay.
open Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 12 to 8, and then Friday and Saturday from 10 to 6. We kind of ran the numbers of when people needed us to be open the most to work around their
Mhm.
work schedules. Pueblo is a very industrial city, and so we have a lot of people on things like DuPont schedules, and so those hours just made the most sense for our community to be able to use our service.
And so, you talked about, how, and I know I'm staying on this program because we just have a lot of contacts, that I'm aware of in the advocacy community for safe exchange sites like this. So how did that become part of, if you can recall, the courts, to have that just, as part of a program that you have available? Was it just something that has been ingrained in part of the court system there?
The program has existed since I've been here. I think we've had this program for quite a few years, maybe a couple of decades. And so I don't know how it kind of originated, but I would imagine, Pueblo's a very thoughtful place. And so I'm sure a few people came together and said, hey, what if we provided this space because they saw a need? So I don't really have the factual historical data on how that got started. But I'm sure it was just a group of people who saw a need and we jumped in to fill that spot.
And so, as part of the work that you do in the community, I mean, how do you collaborate with the other agencies in your community for all the wonderful services that you do?
That's a great question. So we have a few different programs that we operate. We actually applied in recent years for something called a HEAL grant. It's a federal
Hmm.
grant that allowed us to provide office space in our office for Health Solutions, which is our local mental health provider, Catholic Charities, which provided parenting support and courses. And then we also worked with United Way to have a financial empowerment center here in our office. And so it was kind of a one-stop shop effort. Anything somebody needed, they could come here in one place. They could get all of those appointments scheduled, and we could kind of provide those wraparound services. And so based on, the positive feedback that we received from that, we're working on continuing that HEAL grant just with another subrecipient, just to make sure that we have as many resources in one place as possible for the families we serve. Beyond that, Pueblo has a domestic violence task force of which we are a member. We serve with places like ACOVA, the Pueblo Rape Crisis Services, who now goes by Juniper SoCo, and just some of those other agencies we work with, probation and the district attorney's office. Just again, like I said earlier, to make sure we have as much education, we're all speaking the same language and on the same page. So we're proud to say that we work with a number of different agencies. One of our big pushes is our prevention program. So our prevention
Hmm.
and outreach, they go into local schools, colleges and universities, different places like libraries, just to provide information and education to folks kind of in a passive programming sort of way. So we try to get in as many places as possible just so that people understand kind of the cycle of abuse, the power and control, how to identify. It's important that folks know that domestic violence is not always physical, right? There is a lot
Hmm.
of mental coercion or financial coercion that goes into those sorts of things. And so making sure people recognize this is domestic violence, whether it looks like what you think a textbook definition of domestic violence may or may not be. We have an online referral system as well, and we have a 24-hour crisis hotline that people can call. And it's always so interesting to me the number of times people go, I don't know if this is domestic violence or not, but I thought I would call. And so we always encourage people, if you think it is, it most likely is. So get in touch with us and we'll be happy to provide support services.
And so, in talking on those points right there, and I'd like to expand on a little bit more, you did say your program provides domestic violence services, a safe house program. How does that work with regards to, providing those services, like you said, on a 24-hour basis?
Mhm. So we do have a shelter that's in an undisclosed location. We had to move the shelter a few years ago. Our building is kind of prominent in the downtown area, and it's been here serving women and children since 1935. And so for almost 100 years, this building has stood to do the work that we've been doing. And a lot of people in the community knew that the shelter was here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in recent years, we relocated the shelter to an undisclosed location, but essentially, we will take any referral from anyone in the community. We get a lot of law enforcement, we get local hospitals. We work closely with the forensic nurses. If they have a referral, they need someone to have a safe place to stay, and we can get them transported to our shelter anytime, day or night, as long as there is a bed space available. We will take anyone fleeing domestic violence. So we operate the crisis hotline out of that space as well. It's 24 hours, 365. We always have someone on staff at the shelter. And then a number of us in leadership here at the agency serve in an on-call capacity as well. So if we receive a call in the middle of the night, we will address every call as it comes and just kind of navigate that. It could be something as simple as somebody needs a cab to get to a different space, or maybe they need help with their vehicle. Maybe they need new tires so that they can drive somewhere where they have a positive support system. So we can help provide supportive services for any of those things. When folks come into shelter, we do have a 24-bed shelter. In that space, we provide food, hygiene, anything that folks need just to kind of get back on their feet. We generally allow folks to stay for about 30 days. Our maximum stay is 90 days. And while we have people in the shelter, we also provide case management services. So we help them kind of understand court orders or orders of protection, or help them fill out rental agreements so they can get a new space on their own or find a job, whatever that looks like, so that they can kind of experience some of that independence once they've actually fled from their abuser.
And so, a lot of the programs that you talked about, I mean, obviously, those provide all kinds of issues that are going to be coming from that. I mean, what do you see as your agency's most pressing issues in your community that you face?
I mean, certainly physical domestic violence is always going to be the pinnacle of the work that we do. Unfortunately, um, we see a number of fairly severe physical violence that occurs in our community. Um, our police department, I think, is incredibly taxed. We don't have enough law enforcement officers to respond to situations, and so that can be really difficult. Some people, I think, financially, it is a difficulty for people to flee domestic violence, because finding a place to rent is really difficult, and it's also very expensive. And it's even more so if you have children who you're responsible for as well. And so I think we unfortunately see a lot of people stay in situations that they don't really want to be in, but they don't know that they can afford to do something different.
And so Nicole, looking at any map of Colorado, I mean, Pueblo, the 10th judicial district in and of itself, some areas are pretty sparsely populated. I mean, what do you see as concerns that face those victims that might be in those parts of the judicial district there?
Definitely, I mean, the ability to get to safety. I think we are the nearest shelter for about an hour. The next closest shelter is in Colorado Springs. And so being able to get to a safe space, I'm sure, is incredibly difficult for people in those more remote locations. Just being able to even get a call out to somebody to get help. I know we have our online platform that people can report to, and they say, I can't pick up the phone. I can't actually call
Mhm.
because my abuser is always here. So they're trying to text us or send us emails that they can do privately, maybe while they're in a restroom or something, and they just get a quick 5 minutes alone. And so I think that can be really difficult, because we do serve a number of folks who are remote, and don't have a way to get to safety because they can't really get to us on foot.
And so, and talking about that, I mean, a lot of nonprofits, including Intervention, in order to provide a lot of these services, most nonprofits, they rely on services and fees and grants, things like that, for funding for programs like this. I mean, it's always nice to be in the community and having those times with folks. And I know your agency is going to be doing a fundraiser coming up here pretty quick for your agency. And I'd like you to talk about that, because I think those are important things for people to understand, that might not have a knowledge base about the wonderful work that you folks do. So if you can talk to, a little bit about that, just, kind of, sell that point.
Sure. Thank you for asking. I mean, funding, I think we know statewide with cuts to VOCA and other funding sources. I know recently with some of the executive orders that were signed, a lot of us kind of went into panic mode because it's scary to think that someone can flip a switch and shut off our funding. So we definitely want to do everything we can to be as resourceful and self-sustainable as possible. So we do try to host different kind of events, and also just so the community knows that we're here.
Hmm.
A lot of times people know about maybe the shelter that's in Colorado Springs, but they don't know that we're right here in Pueblo. And so making sure that people know we exist. We rebranded from the YWCA in 2023. So our name change is fairly new. And so just having these events to make sure that people know we're still here, we're still doing the same work, we do still exist. But our upcoming event is actually Friday, March 14th. It's from 4 to 7. And it's going to be here in our historic building on the corner of 8th and Santa Fe in Pueblo. It's called Ode to Chocolate Indulgence. If anybody is familiar with some of the former events that the YWCA used to host, this was a huge event, a big fan favorite. So we're happy to bring that back to the community. But this is just a smaller version of that. We're going to have some different kind of chocolatiers and local bakeries come and serve chocolates and cocktails. And you're going to get to bid on your favorite chocolate item. We're going to have some silent auction baskets and things. And it's just going to be a good time to socialize and raise some money for our domestic violence shelter and some of the services that we provide. And we really hope that anyone in the area who is available will come. We have about 17 tickets left last I looked.
Really?
So
That's
get
wonderful. Get it
get your
close.
ticket today.
It's always nice to say that we're sold out.
That's right.
It's-
That's right. I'm going to buy the last 17 tickets myself, so we will be sold out. It'll be okay.
Well, good. Well, good. That's wonderful to hear. Because a lot of times too, in the work that we do, we don't highlight that enough, in the victim advocacy community. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons as to why, we created this podcast was because, I mean, there's thousands of podcasts out there, as you know. And ironically, I want to certainly give, props to Pueblo because I was on the way back from a Vail board meeting. I think you were there too. And while we were coming into the Denver metro area, I was asking the person who does our victim services in Pueblo. I asked her, I said, tell me about the podcasts that you listen to. And she was telling me about all the crime ones that are out there. And for a moment there, I just sat there and I said, do you know of anything that's out there for victim advocacy? And, she paused and she goes, I listen to a lot of them and there isn't anything like that. And I think that's why we want to, have this program out there so we can, bring the work out there to everybody that's doing this work. And so I want to ask you as we get ready to close this, tell me your elevator speech about Mariposa. So let's say, for instance, you and I are, we're in an elevator somewhere and we're coming down. Let's say, for instance, we're at your very beautiful Pueblo Judicial Center. And I mean, that thing is huge. I mean, you can pretty much see it from the space station. So just tell me a little bit, give me your speech about Mariposa.
Sure. So Mariposa Center for Safety serves to support those fleeing domestic violence. And our goal is to ensure that we can one day end the cycle of abuse and agencies like ours never have to exist again.
And that is a perfect speech for your organization. So I truly want to thank you, Nicole, because being here today, because I know the work as an advocate. An advocate, it's a noun, it's a verb, it's an adjective, and that is the work that we do. And I truly want to thank you for being here. One last thing, Nicole, if you could tell folks your agency phone number and your website, that would be great.
Sure. So our website is mariposacenterforsafety.org. And our crisis line, which is important, is 719-545-8195. We also do have an email that is a generic email address. It's hello at Mariposa, C as in center, S as in safety.org. So we would love to connect with other local partners and people doing the work. I think I love the idea of this podcast talking about advocacy and the work that we do. Sometimes it's important to remind ourselves that we're not on an island doing this all alone. I hope that some of the things I've shared and maybe spark some ideas in other advocates and things they can do at their agencies. And then also know that some of our struggles are shared and we're right there with you. And we will continue to fight the good fight and hopefully put ourselves all out of a job one day.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I really do appreciate you being on here today with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.